The clock on the far wall doesn't tick the way a clock should. It makes a shallow, tired sound, like a fingertip tapping glass, then pauses, then starts again, as if it has to remember its job each time. The hands move anyway. They move with the same indifference as the thin gray light slipping through the blinds. Someone has opened a window somewhere in the building. Not wide, just enough. Cold air keeps arriving in small, disciplined waves, carrying the smell of damp wool and old paper, and something faintly metallic. It stirs the edges of a curtain. It doesn't reach the center of the room. The center stays warm, stale, lived in. A man in the corner pours coffee from a dented pot into a cup without looking. He does it by feel, the way you do something you've done too many times to count. The stream is steady. The cup fills. He stops at the same height as always, leaving the same dark ring on the inside porcelain. He sets the pot down. The metal base kisses the tabletop with a soft, final clink. Nobody speaks for a while. There are other sounds, small ones that don't require permission. A chair sighs as someone shifts their weight. A sleeve brushes against a coat button. A match scrapes, flares, then calms into an ember. The smoke rises in a straight, patient line until it meets the ceiling and spreads out, unwilling to choose a direction. On a desk near the door, a pencil rolls an inch, stops, rolls again, stops again. It never falls. It keeps testing the edge like it's learning the room's balance. Somebody keeps folding and unfolding a single sheet of paper, not reading it, just folding it into neat thirds and opening it again, smoothing it flat with the palm. Fold, open, smooth. The paper has begun to soften at the creases like cloth. Each time it opens, it makes a quiet sound, dry and intimate, the way a page turns in a church. Across from him, a man with a narrow face stares at a telephone that hasn't rung. The receiver sits heavy in its cradle, the cord coiled with obedient tension. His eyes flick once to the clock, then back. He doesn't touch the phone. He doesn't need to. The space between his hand and the black plastic feels charged anyway, as if the air itself is waiting for contact. A door somewhere down the corridor closes, not slammed, just shut with practiced care. The sound travels through the walls in a muted wave. For a second, the room reacts the way skin reacts to cold. A tightening, a subtle collective bracing, and then it loosens again, pretending nothing changed. There is a rhythm to waiting. It isn't dramatic. It is repetitive, almost gentle, and that is what makes it difficult. It asks for nothing while taking everything. Someone clears his throat. Another man lifts his cup, drinks, swallows, and sets it down exactly where it was. The circle of moisture on the wood darkens and spreads. It will dry later. Everything dries later. A pen scratches on a notepad in short bursts, then stops. The hand hovers above the paper, unsure whether the next mark matters. The pen resumes, slower. The ink looks too black, too confident. The writer's fingers tighten slightly, as if he can squeeze the meaning out of it. Outside the blinds, there is the low, distant movement of machines. Engines idling, engines passing, engines being tested and left to rumble like restrained animals. None of them accelerate. None of them arrive. They simply continue, as if the world has decided to keep breathing at the same shallow pace, no matter what happens inside this room. A man near the window checks his wristwatch, then checks it again a moment later, as if the first glance might have been wrong. He turns the watch slightly to catch the light. The second hand moves. It moves like it believes in time more than the people do. For a brief moment, a laugh almost happens. Just a small exhale through the nose, a reflex to some private thought. But it dies before it becomes sound. The room refuses it. The room prefers restraint. The room prefers the illusion that composure is control. In the stillness, the smallest details become loud. The seam on a glove, the frayed edge of a collar, the way a man's boot taps once, then stops, as if he's caught himself revealing impatience. Even breathing feels deliberate, rationed. Inhale, hold, exhale, like the air is meant to last. Then, from somewhere unseen, a thin, distant bell rings. One short ring that might have been a mistake, or a signal, or nothing at all. Everyone hears it. No one asks what it meant. The clock continues its flawed tapping. The coffee cools, the cigarette shortens. The paper is folded again. and time keeps moving forward, whether anyone is ready or not, because whatever is coming is already closer than it should be. The name of the place comes later, but the feeling of it arrives immediately. The sense that the building was designed to keep weather out and worry in. Morning has been declared technically. Light exists. Somewhere beyond the walls there is a sky, but inside, the hours are measured by smaller, more reliable things. The first kettle boiled, the first set of boots tied, the first stack of papers carried from one desk to another. The day begins the way it always begins, with men pretending they are starting something when, in truth, they are simply continuing. In a corridor lined with dull paint and old notices, a young orderly walks past a row of hooks holding coats that never fully dry. The wool is dark with damp at the shoulders. It smells faintly of smoke and cold rain and sweat that's been sealed in too long. He moves carefully, keeping his elbows close, as if the air itself is crowded. At the far end of the hall, someone has placed a radio on a filing cabinet. It is turned low, quiet enough that it can be ignored, loud enough that it can't truly disappear. The voice coming through is steady, practiced, almost tender in its calm. It speaks of fronts and movements and distances in a tone that suggests these are concepts, not bodies. A clerk with pale hands flips through a ledger, licking his thumb every few pages. His motions are quick and professional. He doesn't read the names the way a person reads. He reads them the way you count inventory. When he reaches the bottom of one page, he taps the edge of the paper twice to square it, as if precision will protect him. In a small room that smells of ink and old cloth, two men in uniform stand over a table with a map pinned to it. The map is worn, creased, patched where it is torn. There are pencil lines drawn across it, clean strokes that suggest certainty. A third man, older, with a face that looks carved rather than grown, holds a ruler and makes another mark with the confidence of someone following instructions. No one calls it confidence. No one calls it anything. It is simply procedure. A messenger arrives with a leather pouch clutched to his chest. He is breathing through his mouth, but he has not been running. He is simply carrying his urgency in his lungs. He nods to the man at the desk, hands over the pouch, and waits. The man at the desk opens it, removes a folded sheet, and reads with his eyes moving in controlled, narrow jumps. His expression changes only slightly, just a tightening around the mouth, a stilling in the shoulders. It is the kind of change that would go unnoticed by anyone not watching for it. He refolds the paper along the original creases. He places it beside a stack of others. He reaches for his pencil. He writes something down. Short, neat, ordinary. Then he continues, as if the paper had been a routine report about supplies. Elsewhere in the building, a boiler coughs and settles, sending heat through old pipes that knock and click like impatient bones. Men hold their hands near radiators, palms turned outward, soaking warmth into their skin. Someone makes a joke about the weather. It lands softly, like a coin dropped into a pocket. Acknowledged, hidden, forgotten. In a mess room, bread is sliced too thin, then sliced again to make the pieces seem larger. A knife scrapes across a wooden board. Tea is poured into cups stained brown from months of use. A soldier with freckles stirs his drink with the handle of a spoon, watching the surface swirl as if it might tell him something. He eats, he chews, he swallows. He wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. A man at the end of the table opens a letter and reads it twice. The paper is soft and folded many times, the kind that has traveled far. He holds it close to his face. He smiles once, brief, private, then folds it again and puts it in his pocket. He does not share the contents. He does not need to. Everyone understands letters are small lifelines and you don't tug on someone else's rope. The building is full of doors, and each door has its own rules. Some are opened freely. Some require knocking. Some require a name spoken low to the man inside. In the central office, the door remains closed longer than usual. People glance at it, then away, and pretend they haven't looked. A secretary sits at a typewriter and produces a steady rhythm. Click, 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 followed by the dull thump of the carriage return. The sound is comforting in its normality. It suggests that paperwork still matters, that requests and responses still follow channels, that the world remains organized enough to be captured in forms. On the wall beside her, A calendar hangs with yesterday's date still visible. No one has torn it off. No one has remembered, or no one has wanted to. At a long table in an adjoining room, cups are arranged as if for a meeting that hasn't begun. The spoons sit on saucers aligned. A jug of water sweats slowly, making a dark halo on the cloth. Chairs wait with the patience of objects that do not know fear. A lieutenant, young enough that his uniform still looks new, walks in and stops when he sees the arrangement. For a second, he stands as if he's walked into a room where someone has died and the body has been removed. He swallows. He adjusts his collar. He moves to the far end and takes a seat that places his back to the wall. He looks at the clock. Then he looks away before it can look back. Outside, vehicles move in slow procession. Tires hiss over wet stones. Engines idle, then shut off, then start again. Men step down from trucks and stamp their feet against the cold, laughing too loudly, rubbing their hands together. Someone lights a cigarette and offers one to another. They accept. They stand close, shoulders almost touching, sharing the small heat of smoke and company. A courier on a bicycle passes through the gate, cap pulled low, coat flapping behind him like a flag. He does not stop. He glances once toward the main building, then pedals harder. In the communications room, headphones sit on hooks beside a switchboard. A man with heavy eyelids watches a row of indicator lights that do not change. He shifts in his chair. He adjusts a knob by a fraction. The hiss of static alters, becoming slightly softer, slightly sharper. He listens with the seriousness of someone awaiting a voice that may decide his entire day. The hours stretch, and everyone stretches with them, pretending the slack is comfort instead of danger. They hold on to routines because routines are what you can control. You can line up cups. You can sharpen pencils. You can fold papers. You can make the same walk down the same corridor and greet the same faces. You can pretend that if the world is going to crack, it will do it loudly with warning, like thunder. But the irregularities are already there, woven into the ordinary like a hairline fracture in glass. A map is missing from its hook, and no one admits to taking it. A phone rings once, just once, then stops as if the caller changed their mind. A man asks a question about an order that hasn't been issued yet, then laughs and says he must have misheard something yesterday. A stack of forms is returned unsigned. At midday, the light shifts through the blinds, and dust turns in the air in slow spirals, beautiful and indifferent. Someone eats without tasting. Someone writes without thinking. Someone stands at the window and watches the yard with the stillness of a person waiting for a train that should have arrived an hour ago. In the central office, a chair scrapes against the floor. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to be heard through the door. A murmur follows, voices low, controlled. Then silence again. No one in the corridor moves toward that door, not yet, because to move toward it would be to admit something is happening. And in wartime, admitting is often the first surrender. So they keep their hands busy. They keep their faces calm. They keep their voices measured. They keep their eyes from lingering too long on the details that don't fit. The clock on the wall keeps tapping, unreliable but relentless. Its pauses growing slightly longer as if even time is hesitating, wondering whether it should keep going. And somewhere in the building, a message waits to be carried into the open, held back only by a thin, human habit. One more minute of pretending everything is still normal. By early afternoon, the building has learned a new quiet. It isn't the calm of morning, when silence feels optional. This is a practiced quiet, one that settles in after hours of holding the same posture. Muscles ache slightly, minds drift and return. The air feels thicker, as if too many thoughts have been left unspoken, and now float invisibly between people. In the communications room, the man at the switchboard rubs his eyes and leans closer to the equipment. The static has changed again. Not louder, not softer, different. A faint, uneven pulse rides beneath it, like something brushing against the edge of hearing and pulling away. He adjusts the dial a fraction. The sound resists him, slipping back into its previous shape. He makes a note anyway, just a small mark in the margin of his logbook. He doesn't underline it. Down the hall, a runner slows as he approaches the central office. He was moving quickly, almost running, but something about the closed door makes him reduce his pace. He straightens his jacket. He smooths his hair with his hand. By the time he reaches the door, he looks like someone arriving on routine business. He knocks once. Inside, voices pause. Then one voice, older, controlled, answers. The runner steps in, delivers his message, waits. He watches as the paper is read. The same subtle tightening appears. The same careful refolding. The same placement beside other papers that now form a slightly uneven stack. "You can go," the voice says. The runner hesitates, just long enough to suggest he expected more. Then he nods and leaves. In the corridor, he exhales through his nose, annoyed with himself for holding his breath. In the map room, someone notices a discrepancy. It is small, a line that doesn't quite align with another, a mark that seems too confident for information that arrived late. A young officer points it out with the tip of his pencil, his tone light, almost apologetic. The older man beside him squints, leans in and considers it for a long moment. "It'll be corrected," the older man says finally. He erases nothing. He draws nothing new. He simply moves the ruler aside and folds the map back into its familiar creases, as if the problem has been contained within the paper. The young officer nods. He does not insist. At a desk near the window, a typist pauses mid-sentence. Her fingers hover above the keys. She frowns at the page in the machine, rereads the line she just typed, then reaches up and rolls the paper back slightly. She corrects a single word. The sentence now reads cleaner, safer. She resumes typing, the rhythm returning, though her shoulders remain slightly raised. Outside, clouds gather in a way that suggests weather, but delivers none. The light dims, then brightens again. Men look up instinctively, then return to their tasks, embarrassed by the reflex. In the yard, a truck that was meant to depart an hour ago still sits idling. The driver leans against the door, smoking. He checks his watch, then taps the cigarette against the metal step. Ash falls, gray and fine. He lights another cigarette with the first and keeps waiting. A mechanic passes by and comments on the engine sound. Just casually, just enough to show expertise. "Running rough," he says. "It's fine," the driver replies. "Always sounds like that." The mechanic shrugs and walks on. He does not turn back. In the mess room, lunch trays are cleared away. Someone mentions that supplies seem lighter than usual. Someone else jokes that it's probably his appetite that's grown. Laughter flickers, thin but functional. The conversation moves on to a card game planned for later, to the quality of the bread, to whether the rain will come before nightfall. A man at the end of the table listens without contributing. His spoon rests untouched in his bowl. When someone asks if he's finished, he nods and stands, leaving the food behind. No one comments. People stop noticing absences long before they admit them. In an office with no windows, a telephone finally rings. It rings twice before it is answered. The man who picks it up listens without speaking, his face neutral, his free hand resting flat on the desk. He says yes once, then understood, then nothing else. When he hangs up, the dial spins back into place with a faint, impatient whir. He sits still for a moment longer than necessary. Then he reaches for a folder, opens it and adds a single sheet to the contents. He does not label it. Down the corridor, someone laughs too loudly at something that isn't funny. The sound echoes, and then feels immediately out of place like a dropped object in a quiet room. The laughter stops. An apology follows, unnecessary and soft. The calendar on the wall is finally corrected. Yesterday's page is torn away and folded into a pocket. Today's date is revealed, crisp and official. For a moment, this feels like progress. Time acknowledged, order restored. But the clock above it still hesitates between seconds, pausing as if listening. A clerk notices that a signature is missing from a form that should not be missing anything. He considers taking it down the hall to be signed. He considers the walk, the interruption, the closed door. He places the form at the bottom of the stack instead, telling himself it can wait until later. In the communications room, the faint pulse in the static returns. This time, the man hears something else beneath it, a rhythm that almost resembles structure, almost resembles intent. He straightens, heart ticking faster for a few beats, then tells himself it's interference, atmospheric conditions, nothing worth escalating. He writes another note in the margin. This one is smaller. Across the building, conversations continue with the careful optimism of people who believe that if something were truly wrong, someone would say so. Doors open. Doors close. Boots walk familiar paths. Papers change hands. Orders are referenced but not restated. The machinery of the day keeps turning, grinding softly, efficiently, as it always has. Only the smallest details misbehave. A light flickers and steadies. A watch stops for half a second, then resumes. A man starts to speak, then decides against it. And with each ignored signal, each softened concern, the space between what is known and what is admitted grows thinner. So thin now that it hums quietly, like a wire pulled too tight, waiting for the moment it will no longer hold. As afternoon slips toward evening, time begins to behave differently. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone can point to. It simply compresses, like air before a storm, the hours drawing closer together without losing their shape. Clocks still move. Schedules still exist. But the space between moments feels narrower, more deliberate, as if the day is guiding itself toward a conclusion it refuses to name. In the central office, the door finally opens. Not wide, just enough for a man to step out and close it behind him. He stands there for a second longer than necessary, one hand still on the handle, eyes scanning the corridor as if confirming the building is still where he left it. His face is composed. His voice, when he speaks, is calm. "Prepare the room," he says to no one in particular. Someone nods immediately. Someone else is already moving chairs, aligning them by instinct. Cups are refilled, water is replaced, papers are gathered, squared, redistributed. The act of preparation feels almost ceremonial, like setting a table for a guest who may or may not arrive. The meeting does not begin right away. Men take their seats slowly, deliberately choosing places that reflect habits rather than hierarchy. Jackets are unbuttoned, then buttoned again. A pen is uncapped, recapped. A folder is opened and closed without a single page being turned. The map is brought in last. It is unfolded with care and laid flat. For a moment, no one touches it. They look at it the way people look at something they've trusted for a long time, suddenly aware it might be wrong but unwilling to accuse it yet. A question hovers in the room. It is not spoken. Instead, someone asks for confirmation on a minor detail: timing, sequence, alignment. The answer comes quickly, confidently. Heads nod. The question dissolves into procedure. In the communications room, the man at the switchboard receives a signal that lasts less than a minute. It is incomplete, fragmented, enough to suggest direction, not enough to demand response. He listens twice, rewinds the tape, listens again. His jaw tightens. He considers taking the headphones off the hook and walking them down the hall himself. He doesn't. He files the report through the proper channel. He waits. Outside, the light has shifted again. Shadows stretch longer than expected, pooling at the edges of buildings, collecting beneath vehicles. The yard feels quieter now, not because fewer people are present, but because movement has slowed. Men stand with hands in pockets, weight shifting from one foot to the other. Conversations trail off more easily. A truck engine is shut down at last. The sudden absence of sound feels wrong, like a held breath released too early. Someone glances at it, then away. Inside, a lieutenant reviews a list he has already memorized. He traces a name with his finger, pauses, then moves on. The list is correct. It has been checked. He knows this. Still, he checks again, slower this time, as if pace alone can reveal a flaw. A messenger is sent down a familiar route with familiar instructions. He repeats them under his breath as he walks, careful not to alter a word. Halfway down the corridor, he slows, struck by the thought that no one told him why the message matters. He delivers it anyway. In the meeting room, the older man clears his throat, not to speak, but to anchor the room. The sound draws attention without demanding it. A younger officer leans forward, ready to listen, then settles back when no words follow. The silence stretches, tight and expectant. A clock on the wall marks the hour with a soft click. No chime, just acknowledgement. The sound feels final in a way clocks are not supposed to feel. Someone suggests waiting for one more confirmation. No one argues. The suggestion becomes a decision without ever being named as one. Papers are set aside. The map remains open. Hands fold. Eyes return to the door, then the clock, then the map again. Elsewhere in the building, a man stands at a window and watches the sky darken. He notices the clouds have finally committed to their shape. Rain is coming. Not yet. Soon. In the communications room, the static smooths out, becoming almost too clean. The man frowns at this more than he did at the noise. He leans closer, listening for imperfections that are no longer there. He reaches for the phone. It rings in his hand before he can dial. He answers, listens, says nothing. When he hangs up, he remains seated, staring at the receiver as if it might speak again on its own. Down the hall, the door to the meeting room opens just long enough for a clerk to step out. He carries a single folder. He walks carefully, like the contents are fragile. He delivers it to another office, places it on a desk, and waits. The man at the desk flips through the pages quickly, efficiently. He stops at one page, reads it again, then once more, slower. "We'll proceed," he says. The words are quiet, unemphatic. They land anyway. The clerk nods and leaves. He does not hurry. There is no urgency in his steps, only inevitability. Back in the meeting room, chairs shift. A pen scratches a final note. The map is adjusted by a fraction of an inch, just enough to make it feel deliberate. No one says that this is the last window. No one frames the moment as decisive. They only feel it, in the way the room seems smaller now, the air heavier, the options fewer. In the way waiting has transformed from a pause into a narrowing path. Outside, the first drop of rain strikes metal and evaporates. Inside, the silence tightens its grip, and somewhere between one breath and the next, the chance to stop what is coming begins to slip quietly, almost politely, out of reach. Nothing announces the change. There is no sound that marks it, no word spoken differently, no visible shift that can be pointed to afterward and named. If someone were watching closely, they might say the room simply settled, like dust after a door closes. In the meeting room, the map is folded, not quickly, not carelessly. The older man does it himself, pressing each crease flat with the side of his hand, aligning edges until the paper becomes a familiar rectangle again. When he finishes, he does not return it to its case right away. He rests it on the table, fingertips still touching the surface, as if feeling for something beneath. No one asks why it's being folded now. A pen is capped. Another is placed parallel to the table's edge. Someone pushes their chair back an inch, then stops, unsure whether standing is appropriate yet. The moment stretches, thin and quiet. In the central office, a clerk removes a document from a folder and stamps it. The stamp makes a dull final sound, inked rubber against paper. It is not loud, it does not echo, but it changes the room. The clerk pauses afterward, holding the stamp above the page as if considering whether the mark was necessary. He does not undo it. He slides the document back into the folder and closes it. The folder is placed on top of another, then another. The stack is neat, official, finished. Down the corridor, the man at the switchboard notices the indicator light change. It is subtle, a shift from one steady glow to another. He straightens instinctively, heart responding before his mind does. He checks the panel twice to be sure. The signal is there. It is stable. He reaches for his logbook and records the time. He hesitates for a fraction of a second, pen hovering above the page, then writes the entry cleanly. No question mark. No annotation. He exhales slowly, not realizing until afterward that he had been holding his breath. In the yard, the men by the trucks are told they can stop waiting. They do not ask what changed. They nod. They stub out cigarettes. One of them stretches his shoulders, relieved. Another jokes that it's about time. The sound of laughter returns briefly, lighter now, unburdened by expectation. An engine turns over. The sound feels ordinary, necessary, inevitable. Inside, a messenger is handed an envelope sealed with wax. He feels the warmth of it through the paper, the imprint of a signet already cooling. He turns it once in his hand, noting its weight. He is told where to take it. He repeats the destination back to be sure. Correct, the man says. The messenger leaves. In a small office near the stairwell, a lieutenant signs his name at the bottom of a page he has not fully read. He trusts the headings. He trusts the structure. He tells himself there will be time to understand later. The pen scratches, lifts, scratches again. His signature looks steady. A phone rings. This time it is answered immediately. The conversation is brief, polite, efficient. When it ends, the receiver is placed back with care, not dropped, not rushed. In the meeting room, chairs scrape softly as men stand. There is no speech, no closing remark. The gathering dissolves the way fog does, quietly, without direction. People collect their belongings, straighten jackets, glance once more at the table as if expecting to see something they missed. The map case is closed at last. Its clasps click shut, one after the other. In the hallway, someone pauses beside the calendar and tears away another page, realizing the day is nearly over. The new date beneath it looks strange already, like it belongs to a different version of the building. In the communications room, the man removes his headphones and hangs them on the hook. He rubs the bridge of his nose. The static has gone. The line is clear. Clear lines, he knows, are not always a comfort. Outside, rain begins properly now, steady, patient, soaking into the ground without drama. The sound fills the spaces between buildings, between thoughts. The trucks begin to move. Inside, the last file is locked away. The key turns once, twice. It is removed and placed in a drawer. No one says it out loud, but the air has changed. The waiting is over. Not because something has happened, but because something has been set in motion that cannot be recalled, rerouted or undone without breaking the very order that allowed it to begin. The building exhales, and somewhere within its walls, an invisible line has been crossed so quietly that only silence seems to notice. The building grows still in a way that feels intentional, not abandoned, not asleep, just paused, as if it has been instructed to hold its position and obey. Footsteps thin out, doors close more softly than before. Even voices seem to recognize the change, lowering themselves without being asked. In the corridor outside the meeting room, the lights hum faintly. One flickers, steadies, then flickers again, like it is deciding whether to draw attention to itself. No one looks up. Everyone has learned by now which details are allowed to matter. A man stands alone near the window at the end of the hall. Rain slides down the glass in uneven paths, racing, merging, disappearing. He watches without focus, his reflection layered faintly over the darkening sky. For a moment, it looks like two men standing there, one inside, one outside, neither aware of the other. He checks his watch. The second hand moves, smooth, uninterrupted. In the communications room, the equipment sits quiet and ready. No voices, no static. Just the low, continuous presence of power flowing where it is meant to flow. The man who has been there all day remains seated, hands resting flat on his knees, posture straight out of habit rather than alertness. He knows there is nothing left to adjust. He listens anyway. Downstairs, a final report is typed and placed in an outbox. The typist rereads it once, then twice. There are no errors. She aligns the pages, taps them into a neat stack, and slides them forward. The act feels ceremonial, though no one is watching. She removes the paper from the typewriter and leaves the machine as it is, ribbon taut, carriage centered, ready for a sentence that will not be written tonight. In a side office, a coat is taken from a hook and shrugged into. The fabric is heavy with moisture from earlier, still cold at the seams. The man buttons it slowly, missing one button, then correcting himself. His fingers linger at the collar as if checking that he is fully assembled. He does not look back at the desk. Outside, the trucks have disappeared beyond the gate. The yard is empty now except for rain and the dull shine of wet ground under lamps. The engine's absence feels louder than their presence ever did. A guard at the entrance shifts his weight and stamps his foot once, just to feel something move. He peers into the distance, then straight ahead again. His rifle rests where it always rests. He adjusts the strap by a fraction. Inside, keys are returned to their hooks. One hook remains empty. No one comments. The clock on the wall marks another minute. This time there is no hesitation. The sound is clean, decisive. It carries down the corridor and fades without echo. A man in an office reaches for a document, then stops. He closes the drawer instead. The decision feels correct, though he cannot explain why. Some things, he understands now, are finished even if they look unfinished. In the communications room, the man finally stands. He stretches his shoulders, rolling tension out of muscles that have been braced for hours. He switches off one panel, then another, leaving only what must remain on. Before leaving, he glances once more at the board. Everything is exactly as it should be. That is what unsettles him. In the hallway, two men pass each other without speaking. They exchange a look, brief, unreadable, heavy with mutual recognition of something neither will say. One nods. The other returns it. That is enough. Somewhere deep in the building, a door closes that will not be opened again tonight. The sound is dull, absorbed by walls that have learned to keep secrets. Rain continues its steady fall, blurring edges, softening outlines, erasing tracks almost as soon as they form. The world outside seems smaller now, folded inward by darkness and water. Inside, there is nothing left to prepare. No more papers to move, no more signals to wait for, no more questions that can be asked without consequence. People remain where they are, or leave, or stand still, each motion slow, deliberate, respectful of the weight in the air. Breathing becomes noticeable again. Inhale, pause, exhale. In one office, a lamp is switched off. In another, it remains on, casting a lonely pool of light across an empty desk. Dust drifts through it, visible only because the light insists on revealing what would otherwise remain unseen. The clock advances. Somewhere far beyond the walls, something is already moving. But here, nothing moves at all. The silence settles, complete and absolute, pressing gently but firmly against every surface, every thought, every unspoken understanding. It is the kind of silence that exists only at the edge of history, the kind that does not ask permission, the kind that arrives just before everything changes.